There is a specific kind of tired that has no name in any language I know. It is not the tired that comes from working too hard or sleeping too little. It is the tired that lives behind your eyes after years of feeling everything around you while quietly falling apart on the inside. It is the exhaustion of being the person who always shows up, always listens, always absorbs, always forgives, and somehow always ends up alone with the weight of it all at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering what is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. That is the first thing I need you to hear. Nothing is wrong with you. But something was wrong with what happened to you. And that is an entirely different conversation, and it is the one we are going to have today. Because here's what I want you to sit with for a second. The very things that have made your life harder, your sensitivity, your depth, your inability to stop caring even when caring destroys you, those are not flaws in your design. They are features. Beautiful, rare, wildly inconvenient features that the world has spent years trying to convince you are defects. And somewhere along the way, you started to believe it. You started apologizing for crying at commercials. You started calling yourself too sensitive when someone's tone of voice ruined your entire day. You started shrinking in rooms where you felt too much, laughing it off, waving your hand and saying, "Oh, I'm just emotional," like it was something shameful. Like being able to feel the full spectrum of human experience was a liability instead of a gift. I want to talk to you about what it actually means to be an empath. Not in the mystical, crystal energy sense, though if that is your thing, I have no judgment for it. I mean in the very real, very psychological, very neurological sense of the word. Because what you experience is not imaginary. It is not weakness. It is a specific way of being wired that researchers have actually studied and named. There are people who, when they watch someone else experience pain, light up the same regions in their brain as if they were experiencing that pain themselves. Their nervous system does not make a clean distinction between your suffering and mine. Your nervous system is one of those. And instead of someone sitting you down as a child and saying, "Hey, this is what you are, here's how to take care of yourself," you were most likely left to figure it out on your own. Or worse, you were handed messages that made you feel broken for it. Think about your childhood for a moment. Not in a heavy therapeutic way, just for a second. Were you the kid who cried when other kids were crying? Were you the one who couldn't watch animals being hurt in movies? Were you the one who picked up on tension in the room before anyone spoke a word? Who could feel when your parent was upset before their face changed? Who lay awake worrying about a friend who seemed sad at school that day? Were you told you were dramatic, sensitive, too much? Were you told to toughen up, to stop taking everything so personally, to grow a thicker skin? Those messages were the beginning of a long education in abandoning yourself. Because what a child who feels everything deeply actually needs is not to be told to feel less. What they need is protection. What they need is someone to say, "I see how much you feel. I see how the world lands on you differently than it lands on other people. I'm going to help you hold this. I'm going to help you understand it. I'm going to teach you where your feelings end and other people's feelings begin." What they need is someone to stand between them and the world for just long enough to let them build their own defenses from the inside out. Strong ones. Ones rooted in self-knowledge rather than self-erasure. Most of you never got that. And so you grew up doing the only thing that made sense. You became the protector. You became so good at anticipating other people's needs, so good at reading the room, so good at managing the emotional temperature of every relationship you were in, that it became your identity. People started calling you the strong one, the reliable one, the one they called at midnight, the one who always knew what to say. And there was a part of you that loved it because finally, your sensitivity had a use. It was no longer a burden. It was a superpower. And you could tell yourself that story for years, until you couldn't anymore. Until you woke up one day and realized you had been pouring from a cup that no one ever refilled. Until you noticed that the people you held up never seemed to notice when you were falling. Until you felt that particular loneliness of being surrounded by people who love you and still feeling completely, utterly unseen. That loneliness is one of the most specific and devastating experiences of an unprotected empath's life. You can be in a room full of people who adore you and still feel like a ghost. Because everyone around you sees the version of you that holds things together. They see the listener, the nurturer, the fixer, the one who remembers everybody's important dates and asks the follow-up questions and notices the haircut. They have never met the part of you that is exhausted, that is angry, that is grieving things you cannot explain, that is desperate to be asked just once how you are actually doing, and then have someone wait long enough to hear the real answer. And because you are who you are, because your instinct is always to protect others from discomfort, you have probably never shown them that part. You have smiled, you have redirected, you have made someone else's crisis your priority, and quietly folded your own need back into your chest like a piece of paper you will get to later, except you never do. This is what I mean when I say you were never protected. Not just in childhood, but in every pattern you have repeated since. Not because you are weak, but because you never learned that you were allowed to have needs too. You learned that your value was in your usefulness. Your love was measured in your sacrifice. Your worthiness was tied to how much you could hold for everyone else. And the moment you couldn't hold it, the moment you broke down or set a limit or said, "I can't right now," something in you felt like a failure. That feeling is a lie, but it is a very old, very believable lie. Here is something that might rearrange something in your chest a little. Research on people with high empathic sensitivity consistently shows something fascinating and painful. They are significantly more likely to attract relationships where their empathy is exploited. Not because they are naive or foolish, but because their capacity for understanding is so large that they can always find a way to justify other people's behavior. They are the person who says, "But I understand why he does that, he had a hard childhood." They are the one who says, "She doesn't mean it, she's just stressed." They are the one who can hold someone's pain so compassionately that they forget to ask whether that person is actually treating them well. Your understanding is being weaponized against you. By others, yes, but also, and this is the hard part, by yourself. Because somewhere in your nervous system there is a belief that if you understand someone deeply enough, if you are patient enough, loving enough, present enough, you can be the thing that heals them. You can be the reason they finally become who they were supposed to be. And that belief is not entirely without love. It comes from a real and beautiful place. But it is also the thing that keeps you in relationships and friendships and family dynamics long after they have stopped being good for you. Because leaving feels like abandonment. And abandonment is the one thing you cannot bring yourself to be the cause of, because you know too well what it feels like to be the one left behind. Do you hear yourself in that? Because I hope you do. Not so you can feel shame about it, never that, but so you can finally name the thing that has been running quietly in the background of every hard relationship you have ever had. Now here is where I stop being only soft with you, because I think you deserve more than just validation. I think you deserve the truth. You have been using your empathy as armor. That sounds strange, I know, empathy as armor. But think about it. If you are always focused on everyone else's feelings, you never have to sit in your own. If you are always the helper, you never have to be the one who needs help and risks rejection. If you are always the one who understands, you never have to ask to be understood and find out that the person you love doesn't have the capacity to meet you there. Your empathy, in its most defended form, is a way of never being vulnerable. Because you give before anyone can take. You love before anyone can withhold. You show up so thoroughly that no one ever has to choose you, because you have already made yourself indispensable. And indispensable is not the same as loved. It is important to know the difference. Loved means someone chooses you when they don't need you. Loved means someone asks about the parts of you that aren't performing. Loved means someone can hold your darkness without flinching and stay anyway. Indispensable means they would miss what you do for them. That is not a small thing. But it is not the same thing. You deserve to be loved, not just needed. And the terrifying, necessary work of your life is learning to let that be possible, which means learning to need things, which means learning to receive, which means learning that asking for help does not make you a burden, it makes you a human being in a relationship of actual reciprocity. You have spent so long being the one who gives that receiving can feel almost physically uncomfortable. Someone gives you a compliment and you deflect it. Someone offers to take something off your plate and you say, "No, I'm fine." Someone asks what you need and you say, "I'm okay, what do you need?" It is reflexive. It is almost faster than thought. And underneath it is a belief, one you may not even know you hold, that your needs are too much, that they will overwhelm people, That if you truly showed the full extent of what you feel and want and need, people would leave. So you make yourself small. You make yourself manageable. You take up exactly as much space as you think people can tolerate. And you call it being easygoing. It is not easygoing. It is self-abandonment dressed up as flexibility. And here is what it costs you. Every time you do it, every time you betray your own needs to keep the peace or protect someone else's comfort, a small part of you files it away. Your body keeps the score, as the saying goes. And over time, the gap between who you actually are and who you are performing to be becomes so wide that you start to feel numb, or anxious, or both, alternating, sometimes within the same hour. You start to feel like you don't even know what you want anymore, because you have spent so long asking everyone else what they want. That disconnection from yourself is not depression, not exactly, though it can look like it. It is the very specific grief of losing contact with your own inner life. The path back is not dramatic. It does not require you to become a different person, or abandon your sensitivity, or stop caring about the people you love. It requires something much smaller and much harder. It requires you to start treating your own emotional experience as equally real and equally important as everyone else's. To notice what you feel before you notice what everyone else in the room is feeling. To pause before you fix someone else's problem and ask yourself, is this mine to fix right now? To practice saying, I need, out loud, in full sentences, without immediately apologizing for it. It requires you to let people be disappointed by you sometimes. To let someone sit with an emotion you didn't manage for them. To receive care without deflecting it. To let your relationships become more equal, which means they might become smaller, some of them, because not everyone in your life actually wants equality with you. Some people have been quietly counting on your imbalance. That is one of the truths that can break your heart and free you at the same time. Some relationships in your life exist primarily because you enable them. You do the emotional labor, you do the chasing, you do the understanding, and the other person gets to simply be received. The moment you start asking to be received in return, they get confused or distant or suddenly very busy. Not because you did something wrong, but because you changed the deal, and they only signed up for the original deal. Let them go, with love, with the understanding and compassion that is your most natural language, but let them go. Because the space that opens up when you stop maintaining relationships that were always only one direction, that space is where the right people can finally find you. The ones who are not drawn to your usefulness, but to your actual self. The ones who notice when you go quiet. The ones who ask follow-up questions. The ones who can hold your grief as tenderly as you have always held everyone else's. They exist. I promise you, they exist. You are not too much for the right people. You are too much for people who are not equipped for depth. That is a statement about their capacity, not your worth. And this is where I want to leave you. Not with a list, not with steps, but with an image I want you to carry with you. Imagine the version of you that existed before you learned to make yourself small. The child who felt everything and hadn't yet been told that was a problem. Who cried openly and laughed loudly and loved fiercely and took up space without apology. Before the messages came in. Before the world started editing you. That child did not need to be fixed. They needed to be protected. You still do. And the person who finally has to do that protecting, the person who has been waiting to step into that role for your entire life, is you. Not in a harsh, grit-your-teeth way. In the gentlest, most loving way you know how, which, given who you are, is probably the most gentle and loving way that exists. Protect yourself the way you would protect someone you deeply love. With patience. With ferocity when needed. With the absolute refusal to let anyone, including yourself, convince you that you feel too much. You don't feel too much. The world just hasn't been brave enough to feel with you. Until now.